What was inside there is the most horrible thing my eyes have ever seen in my entire life. A head. A human head moving its mouth, talking to me. This time, community, you're going to hear seven extremely macabre stories, and I don't want you to let them fail to unsettle you. They're a bit intense, they're graphic, and this is one of those episodes I'd rather you didn't listen to. If there are children around, or if you're sensitive, it's okay if you skip this one. I'll see you in the next one. If you decide to stay, we're in this together. And little by little from the morning, we'll go through these 7 stories until we make it through them. Some will be very strange stories, bizarre stories that will make you uncomfortable, that I promise you won't let you sleep. You have 10 seconds to leave and watch something calmer because we're about to begin. Are you listening to Relatos de la Noche? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The following is a story I tried to forget for a long time. I never managed to, and I've only shared it a few times. I grew up in a neighborhood near the airport in Managua, Nicaragua. Back then it was even lonelier than it is now. It was a quiet neighborhood with no more activity than that of those of us who lived there in small, humble houses close to Lake Jolotlan. I used to hang out with some older boys who took me to play baseball. I spent time with them because besides, there weren't any other kids my age on my street. That's why I had to venture out with them. So much time, so many times when they did grown-up things, like searching abandoned houses for anything they could take. Sometimes we would walk for miles along the lakeshore to see what we could find on one of those outings. One night, when it was hotter than usual, before we knew it, time had slipped away from us. It was very late, almost 10 o'clock. I had already stayed out way past my time to go back, and even though I was far away and scared to go alone, I had to return as soon as possible, because I knew I was going to get in trouble. If my dad got home before I did, my mom would already be very worried about me, and of course, that mattered to me. But if my dad got home and didn't find me there, I had no idea how he would react. Neither with me nor with my mom, who let me hang out with bad influences, as my father used to say. That's why I started running toward the dark streets until I reached a large fenced lot with barbed wire in the middle. There was a little house that scared me, and my friends said they had checked it out once, but they never went back in. Because I was in such a hurry, I decided to jump the fence and cut through that lot, anything to win a few minutes. When I was running in front of the house, something spoke to me. I heard a voice. A snake. No, not possible. It's a voice. A strange voice I couldn't fully understand. To this day, I don't know why I stopped. Something wasn't right with me. I wasn't in control of myself. Right? Just a step away from the entrance, there was a very old leather suitcase. I felt the need to look there as if I was going to find money or something like that. I remember my body moved forward on its own, as if I wasn't controlling it anymore. I approached the suitcase and opened it. He had them here, right here. What was inside there? It's the most horrible thing my eyes have ever seen in my entire life. A head. A human head, moving its mouth, talking to me. I took 2 steps back and fell. My legs buckled. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The heat of the night was unbearable. And while I kept hearing the voice inside the suitcase, I heard two more coming closer. They were Randall and Jose, two of my friends, who had decided to come back with me to look after me, who had managed to see me. Entering the property, I pointed at the suitcase. They looked in as best they could, picked me up, and carried me out of there until I was able to walk, until my legs responded. They took me home, and when my dad came out angry, they ran away. He came out furious and with a bat, and because of the way I arrived, he thought I was drunk or something like that. He always expected the worst from my friends. I think he slapped me, I'm not sure. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. I couldn't stop repeating that it was talking. That thing was talking to me somehow. I explained to my dad what I saw, where he must have seen me. It was so bad that he went to check if it was true. The police arrived soon. What I saw was real, but it had been there for a long time. There was almost nothing left but bones. They said I imagined she was talking to me, but I remember I could see her eyes, that I saw her moving, that I saw her purple lips moving, talking to me. I remember. What I heard is one of the few memories I don't miss from my beautiful Nicaragua. We were in 5th and 6th grade, my two cousins and I, when they left us at her house. That night, my parents woke me up. They told me we had to leave. We arrived at my cousin's house and they left me there. They were already waiting for me. My parents and theirs left quickly, saying they had to pick up something very important, that we shouldn't worry, that they'd be back soon. I went to the same school as my cousin, so we had seen each other just a few hours earlier. So we were very tired, but I don't know why we couldn't fall asleep. We were just watching television, not talking. We had a strange feeling, like something bad was really happening. Like something was getting closer to us, a strange feeling in my chest, in my back. My body wouldn't stop trembling, my body. We heard slow knocks on the door, very slow, almost like an echo. No, like when someone you know knocks. The worst part was that they knocked on the door behind us, the door of the house. His yard was big and had a tall wall that didn't let you see anything from the street, so someone was inside the yard. My oldest cousin looked out one of the windows, but he couldn't see anything. We started to doubt if we had really heard it there, if we had imagined it, or if it was a distant sound that seemed to come from inside. But we didn't dare to open it. We weren't going to do it. There didn't seem to be anyone. We looked under the door and couldn't see anything. I have to say that my two cousins at that time were a little overweight. So I offered to go out the back door, run around the yard, and check if there was anyone out there or not. I had to convince all of them. We were scared. But at that moment, I was already convincing myself that it had just been my imagination, that there was nothing strange. I went out the back door, and my two cousins stayed there waiting, as if to not leave me completely outside. I only took a few steps, just a few steps, when I saw something in one of the side windows. Someone was peeking into the house. What I'm about to describe is 100% true. What I saw was a woman dressed in black, but her dress was like a tangle of black strips coming out of her head. It looked heavy, and she turned and looked at me. The only thing I can say is that it was like a skull with pieces of skin still hidden among the bones. I screamed really loud. One of my cousins pulled me by the hand to get me inside, and the three of us started crying. They asked me what I had seen outside because they thank God, didn't get to see it. I told them it was a woman peeking into the house. They called a woman who lived nearby on the phone. And I remember very well how my cousins kept saying, "It's a witch, a witch, a witch wants to get in." I knew it was something worse. I could feel it. A few minutes later, 2 neighbors arrived and we quickly ran out to the street with them. One of them went in to check, but she didn't find anything strange in the yard. They didn't believe what we heard. They didn't believe that someone was trying to break in, and that's even though I didn't tell them what he looked like. My mom came home a few hours later and gave us terrible news. My grandparents had died. Then days went by, and we found out that they had decided it themselves, or at least that's what it seemed. They locked themselves in and turned on the gas. It was something that devastated the family. As usually happens, we all felt that we could have done something more, that we could have said something more, but we didn't. Not in time. The grandparents had grown very distant from the family, more and more, until that moment. To start seeing what happened to them that night, there at my cousin's house, I know what I saw, and you must imagine it too. It's already a terrifying sight, but at the same time, when I turned to look, I don't know, I also felt a very strange calm. It's the closest I've ever been to death. Hello community, my name is Marisol, and I want to share a story with you. I never liked letting my son sleep away from home when he was little, but that time I didn't see anything wrong with it. It was at his cousin's house, family, my brother's wife's family, and I trusted them. He was about 10 years old that day when we were there. He was very restless, anxious, but in a good mood. At night I left him when he asked me for permission to have a sleepover with his cousin. My brother wasn't there, nor were my sister-in-law's parents, just her and her son. So I thought it was a good idea so they wouldn't be alone in such a big house. I gave him a kiss, told him to behave, and I went back home feeling at ease. I didn't feel anything unusual or any warning that something would happen. The next morning, very early, my sister-in-law called me. She didn't sound like when something serious happens, but she didn't sound normal either. She told me to go get my son, that it was better if I picked him up, and I left right then. When I arrived, I saw him sitting in the kitchen with a cup of chocolate milk in front of him. He wasn't crying, but there was something strange on his face. He wouldn't look at me directly. I asked him if he had slept well, and he said yes, but he sounded unsure. My sister-in-law took me to another room to talk to me and close the door. She asked me if my son walked in his sleep. I told her no, that he had never done it. Then she told me what had happened. She said that early in the morning when she checked on the children, my son wasn't in the room where they had put him to bed. She thought he had gone with his cousin, but he wasn't there either. She looked for him everywhere. Until she opened the only room that nobody used in that house, and there was my son, asleep on the bed. I knew the story of that room. I knew exactly which one it was. I knew it wasn't used, and I knew why. That was his sister's room, my sister-in-law's younger sister. A young woman who had died of cardiac arrest while she was sleeping. Something extremely strange for a 17-year-old girl. The bed was still there. Nobody ever moved it. Nobody ever went in there, not even to clean. I asked my sister-in-law if anyone had put my son in there, if it was a joke from the cousins, if someone had made a mistake. But she told me no, that nobody had come, that only she got up during the night. When I spoke with my son, he said something I still find hard to repeat. He told me that he woke up in that bed, that he knew it wasn't his, that the room was different, that it smelled strange. He told me that he heard someone breathing, someone who was lying next to him, but he didn't scream. He didn't get up or ask for help. He told me that he felt that if he moved, something was going to happen. He had never spoken to me like that. He never seemed like an adult, describing everything to me. We left immediately. It took us a long time to visit them there again. For years, I kept convincing myself that it had been a nightmare, something his mind made up, something I myself wanted to believe. But over the years, my son confessed something else to me. He told me that breathing didn't feel threatening, that it wasn't violent, that it was calm, like someone who was no longer used to sleeping there. Since then, even now that he's 18 years old, before going to sleep, I check to make sure he's okay, that he has been asleep since I checked from his bedroom door, just to make sure there's nothing lying next to him. Community, remember to send us your stories to the email fordelanoche@gmail.com so we can read them and, if possible, share them as soon as we can. Remember that there is no other channel where we upload stories. Not a single one. Nothing. All those who appear with variations of our name here and on TikTok. Those that you hear with my voice telling stories that are the same ones already told here, but with a different name. Obviously, they are pirates. Please spread the word, especially because we are seeing that they ask for money, that they ask for donations, saying it's to keep creating content. But remember that in Relatos de la Noche, never are we going to ask you for something like that. We will never ask you for donations of any kind. But let me tell you that yes, there is another project, although it's not about stories. It's called El Video Club de Medianoche, a podcast where I participate talking about our favorite horror movies in that project. Yes, go follow us. I'll leave the link in the description and tell us, what's your favorite movie? For now, we continue with more stories tonight. Hello, community. I'd rather not say my name, but I want to tell you something that happened in my family and that we still talk about to this day. When we got together, my dad died very suddenly. It wasn't a violent event, but it was unexpected. An accident in his truck on a rainy night. When we were notified, everything became confusing. Calls, crying, people arriving at the house, quick decisions. No one slept that night. My mom, my sister, and I stayed at the house, waiting for dawn so we could go to the funeral home and start the arrangements for the wake. Anyone who has had to go through that knows that deaths also involve a lot of paperwork. Sometimes people don't even have time to grieve because they're busy taking care of all the necessary paperwork. It was around 3:30 in the morning when the house phone rang, the landline. That was already strange because almost no one had that number, and even if they did, no one called there anymore. But my mom answered, thinking it might be a relative who had just found out. I was watching her and she didn't say anything. At first, she just stood there listening. Then she spoke. Well, I was just a few steps away from her and I could clearly hear what was coming from the receiver. There were no voices or noise, just slow, deep breathing, like someone who was asleep. My mom spoke again, and the breathing stayed the same, constant, not hurried. We thought it was a joke, maybe a friend who didn't know what to say, or a relative calling by mistake, and my mom hung up. The phone, it rang again almost immediately. This time I answered. I didn't say anything, I just listened. It was the same breathing, it didn't sound bad, and it didn't sound agitated or mechanical either. It was normal, too normal, as if someone simply had the phone nearby while they slept. I hung up, and we unplugged the phone from the wall. The three of us looked at each other without saying anything. We didn't talk about what we felt at that moment. We had other things on our minds. But a few minutes later, my mom's cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. She answered, thinking it was from the funeral home, but no one spoke and the breathing could be heard again. My mom hung up and put the phone on the table as if it were burning her. The next morning, while we were going over things to do, my sister noticed something. The number that had called the cell phone was saved on my mom's phone, not with a name, just as a number, but we recognized that it was my dad's number. The same one he had been using for years, the same one that had been turned off since he died, the same cell phone that was at that moment inside his jacket, somewhere in the funeral home. We thought it could be a system error, something technical, maybe a scheduled call or something like that, something we didn't understand. But that number called again just minutes before the wake began. That's when I can be sure that no one else had that device, when it became clear to me that no one else was using it to make calls. Because we already had it, because at that moment we had already left it at my house. We didn't dare to answer that last call. Hello, story community. This story isn't very long, but I hope it entertains you. When I was 17 years old, my grandmother died. More than 15 years have passed since then, and the house remained closed for a long time. No one went in except to clean from time to time until finally my mom started using it. One day, while helping her take out old things, I found a box with photographs and an undeveloped roll of film. It was an old roll, one of those that are hardly used anymore, from a brand that stopped existing a long time ago. It didn't have a date or any notes, it was just there, used. I took it to get developed out of curiosity. To begin with, I didn't think it was still possible, and if it was, I didn't think it would still have the photos that were taken. I wasn't expecting anything important, but when I saw the photos that came out, something didn't sit right with me from the very first one. What was it? A woman with her back turned. It wasn't the same photo repeated. They were different places in my grandmother's house. The hallway, the kitchen, the dining room, the patio. The woman was always seen from behind, always wearing a black dress, her left hand raised to the side and her right hand down, with 2 fingers extended. The posture was exactly the same in all the photos. You couldn't see her face, never. The lighting was bad, as if the photos had been taken at night. The last photograph was the one that struck me as the strangest. It was just a window overlooking the garden, nothing else. I recognized it immediately, but in that image there was no one, just the open window, at night and the darkness outside, nothing else. Days later, I went to that house to visit my mom, who was now living there. It was getting dark when I walked down the hallway where that window is. Without knowing why, I stopped and stood there looking out at the garden. For a second, I thought I saw the same figure, the same silhouette, but now facing me in the garden. I couldn't make out the face. I couldn't see anything. I just felt that someone was there. I turned on the outside light and immediately there was nothing. The garden was empty. I never understood who the person in those photographs was. No one in my family remembers anyone like that. No one recognizes the dress or the posture. We don't know who it is, but we never want to see her again. This story is anonymous for reasons you'll soon understand, and that's because it involves some weapons my dad had at home without a permit. They had belonged to my grandfather, who needed them at the ranch, a shotgun and a couple of rifles, but my dad didn't even remember the ranch. One thing's certain, he liked to hunt. We would go up into the mountains, and once we got onto dirt roads after a couple of hours, he would take the guns out from where he hid them in his car, and we would go hunting. Hunting is just a term we use. We never actually hit anything. I guess the sights were already off, or we were just that bad. But what I want to tell you happened on one of those hunting trips with my father, when we had already reached a spot in the mountains that we really liked. From there, you could see the whole road, you could see the city, you could see where we left the car, and right there we saw a patrol car arrive and park next to our car, as if they were checking it. We got worried, of course. It was illegal to go hunting to have the guns, so we decided to wait a while before going back so we wouldn't have to leave the guns hidden there. With any luck, the police would leave after a while, but time passed and they didn't. Not from that far away. We could only see the two cars on that dirt road in the middle of nowhere. We couldn't tell what the police were doing, but it was as if they imagined what we were up to and had decided to wait for us. When night fell, they finally left, and as soon as they did, we tried to go down quickly. It was going to be very hard to find the way back. The branches kept hitting us in the face. We lost the trail we had taken up. We just kept walking and walking in the direction we thought the car was. Suddenly, my dad, who was walking in front of me, saw something in the distance. Someone was walking toward us. The police, of course, surely, had decided to come look for us. My dad saw a tree next to us, thick enough to hold both of us. He asked if I thought I could climb it, and I said yes, and we did. We climbed as high as we could. My dad told me to climb a little higher, but then I felt the branch I was on was about to break, and my dad tried to hold it. At that moment, we heard people walking underneath us. We stayed completely silent, looking down. There was a full moon, so we were able to see them. They weren't police officers. I swear to you that underneath us, there were 4 figures walking, dragging their feet. They literally looked like they came out of the graves, their skulls eaten away by time, their clothes, their rotten skin. I remember them like those zombie movies I used to watch. The adrenaline was so strong, I didn't faint from fear. Once they left, we quietly went down and continued to the nearby car, making no noise. And when we got to it, my dad drove in silence, and then he asked me, "What did I see? What did I see me?" I told him. He made a face as if he had hoped I hadn't seen them. I asked him what they were, and he said he didn't know. I had never seen a ghost. "Are they like that?" he asked me without waiting for an answer. When we got home, we told my mom about our adventure, how we ended up there, trapped until nightfall. But we didn't mention the 4 figures in the woods, what we saw from the tree. That's a story that was always just between my dad and me because no one would have believed us. And he told it. And today I share that same feeling here that no one will believe it, and that's okay. I don't even understand what it was that we saw in the woods. I've remembered this story since I was a child, but for a long time I thought it was something my mind had made up. We lived in a small house on a quiet street in the town of Martinez Dominguez, Zacatecas. At night before bed, my mom turned off the lights and I spent some time looking out the bedroom window at the street behind the house. Behind us, there was a vacant lot. Sometimes, even if it was late, I would see a man sitting on the sidewalk right in front of the vacant lot behind our house. He didn't do anything. He didn't talk to anyone or move. He was just sitting there with his arms resting on his legs, looking straight ahead, like towards us. For me, it was something normal. Part of the street, like the lamppost or the tree on the corner. But one night I asked my dad, who was that man? And my dad went silent. My mom looked at him again and then looked at me. She asked me which man I was talking about. I pointed to the sidewalk from my window, right where he always sat. My parents looked at each other. My dad told me to go to bed, that it was already late, and the next day I asked my mom again, but she told me not to talk about it again, and I didn't. Sometimes I saw it again, but I never said anything. Years went by. I stopped seeing it. I grew up. We moved when I was already an adult. One afternoon, I went back to that street with my mom because my aunts were still there. Our house was still there. It was very neglected by the family that had moved in after us. I asked my mom, without beating around the bush, about the man who sat on the street behind us at night. My mom sighed and told me that man had died, run over while sitting there many years before I was born. That a drunk neighbor lost control and drove up onto the sidewalk where that poor man used to sit. I saw him for a long time. I saw him many nights. He was, without me knowing it, the only ghost I've ever seen in my life.